Thank you for that introduction, and Shabana, thank you for that wonderful talk prior to this. Very inspirational life story and very uplifting message. So it's a perfect segue to what I was going to talk about. So, and by the way, I'm fortunate to have worked with Shabana in my professional life. So it was good to hear her message. So what I wanted to talk today was kind of at the next level of detail, which is what I call a nonlinear career. I don't have a lot of deep presentation, but I wanted to share my own life story is a product of a nonlinear career, and I'll explain what that means as we go. But I think the way we see career has, and even the way Shabana was describing her own life story, was a very good example of what I think of as a nonlinear career. So I think Shruti already introduced this in more detail. I did my education mostly in institutes in India, worked through various companies in US and in India last 20 years or so. And for the last 4 years, we have been the founder. I've been the founder and one of the founders and the CEO of Resolve.ai. We're a Bay Area-based artificial intelligence startup. You're welcome to go to Resolve.ai and read more about it. I will not bore you with the details of what we do. Let me dive right into what I mean, how I see careers have changed in the last few years in my own perspective and in how I view things. Right. So if you look at the time when I started my career, or kind of in the last few decades, career used to be about progressing up the corporate ladder. That's how most people used to think of a career. You would join as a individual, you'll become a lead, you'll become a manager, you'll become a director, you'll become a VP, hopefully a CEO, right? I mean, that's how we used to view career. My experience, I think that view has changed. It's now more of a kind of a jungle gym version of the ladder, right? So you move up, you move sideways, you slide down, you swing up, you take another ladder to go up, and it's great to experiment and move around. So the message I want to leave you here is, do not think of your careers. And I know you're still in school, you will go to college, you will start your career someday. And when you do, keep thinking of it in terms of not just vertical progression, but as an opportunity to go different things, some of which might be at the same level, some of them might be a step down, some of them might be a step up, but enjoy the experience. At the end of the day, if you think of your career as a set of these moves that are not always linearly leading in one direction, I think you will enjoy it more. And I think at the end of the day, you'll come out ahead. I think if there's one thing I will relate from my experience is I used to run a very large team, couple hundred employees. And the next opportunity I volunteered for was an individual opportunity. No employees reporting to me. I was just by myself doing everything myself. And the reason I did that was I wanted to get that specific experience. In that case, I wanted to understand how user experience was being done and what that meant, because to me, that was an interesting new area that was coming up. And eventually, I ended up building another team. Eventually, I ended up starting my own company. But a lot of the career moves I made were not designed to be progressing in a certain direction. They were designed to get either new experiences or different experiences or a different cultural exposure, whatever the objective might have been. The second thought I will, and feel free to ask me questions on all of these, I'll just keep going at the end. We can take questions, is the other, I think, shift that I've seen is we used to think as work and learning as a sequential arrangement. So you finish your school, you go to college, you start working, and then you keep working, and then you retire and hopefully have a great life throughout the process. But I think that's changed. I think the one advice I will give in how to advance yourself is to never give up on learning as a career objective. So it doesn't matter whether you are just a recent graduate starting an internship or starting your first job, or you are a senior executive leading a group with hundreds or thousands of people. The one variable that you have to maintain throughout is you should always strive to learn new things. Now, new thing could be anything. You could learn a new way of relating and managing people. You could learn about a new technology that's just launched. You could go to a conference and listen to somebody describe how the future might be 10 years from now. Whatever you do, whatever your preferred mechanism is, whether you like to watch YouTube videos or read books or go to conferences, don't pause on your learning. The one thing that will help you build upon and advance your career is this idea of constant learning. So while you're working, figure out some time in your life to keep adding to your to who you are and continue to grow. A lot of times the people who I see struggle later on in their career is at some point they got really good at what they were doing and then they stopped learning anything else just because they were top of the game. And as I said, if you take the previous slide in context, that used to work when you were kind of in a single line. I got good at X and I keep doing X for the rest of my life. But that model has changed. And, now you will be moving around, moving sideways, moving downwards. You have to have the adaptability and the flexibility to keep learning. The third thing that I see in career is, do you want to go deep in something or do you want to go wide across a bunch of things? And I think if you can do that deliberately, a lot of us subconsciously or just by chance happen to end up in kind of one or the other trajectories. It will be good if you reflect and figure out where you see yourself. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's extremely successful people who have made tons of money doing both directions and are happy with their career, enjoying what they're doing. So I'll take an example. Let's say you're going to be a data scientist. I know that's an example everyone can relate to, but in kind of one example, you will just go get better at it, right? So you will say, hey, I love data science. I'm going to now learn machine learning. I'm going to learn artificial intelligence. I'm going to learn visualization. You keep moving kind of in that domain and you become essentially known for who you are, right? And I think anytime someone thinks of, hey, who's the best person around here who knows that space, it's you, and you progress really rapidly based on kind of just becoming that expert. The other way is, yes, I know data science, but I also would love to understand how marketing works with data science, and maybe I need to learn a little bit of project management. And typically those career tracks end up becoming more of a generalist career track. You're not known for a subject or a functional area. You're really known for maybe managing a team or delivering an outcome for the business. As I said, there is no right or wrong answer. This is really about what you enjoy doing. The only reason I'm talking about this is I think this is something you should reflect on and try to, over the next few years. You don't have to do this today. It's very early in your career. You probably don't know the answer. But as you get started in your career, figure out, do you like knowing more in a specific domain, or do you want to just experiment and learn new things and figure out how to plan your career depending on kind of where your interest and your passion lies? I have two small suggestions, and I think Shabana touched on this in her presentation as well. To me, the number one success factor that above all, like above your GPA, above your school you went to, above everything else, is, can you relate to other people? Because at the end of the day, people like to work with other people, and it's just a constant that has not moved much, even with all the technology and everything else, right? Are you able to build connections, right, with a bunch of people who maybe like you, maybe different from you? Can you empathize with people? This is, if all in this list, if there's one thing I will emphasize the most, it's this idea of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and being able to relate to what they're going through, where they're coming from. And you can practice this in everyday conversations, right? This is not something that's a special skill. When you're having a working session with your classmates, just try to maybe pause in your head before you speak to see, where is this other person coming from, right? Being able to collaborate effectively, and collaboration is both a soft skill and a hard skill. So focusing on building collaboration, good communication, right? So, just letting people know if you're running late. I know it's some basic stuff, but being able to communicate, set expectations. And last but not least, being able to be flexible, right? Don't always dig into your position saying, hey, everyone's going to do it this way. I think being able to understand and relate to other people's positions and being flexible when it's needed. If you practice what to me is better people skills, nothing stops your career progression, right? So, and I think it helps you in personal life as well as in professional life. So that's one thought I will leave. The other key thought I will leave is just working on developing better habits. This book that I mentioned here is super old, but does not get old. I think the idea of being good at managing time, being able to do effective communication, look it up and see if it makes sense to you. But the idea of developing good professional habits, those are the two ideas I will put on the table for you all to think about as you move forward in your own life. And then I have, as I get older, I love to give life lessons. So just bear with me being on the soapbox for another minute. Is the 4 life lessons that I think I've learned and derived over time is being upset. It's great to have tasks and goals, right? Your goals today might be in getting into a good college, getting good grades, finishing your AP courses. But at the end of the day, enjoying what you're doing is really important. So if you're doing something and you're miserable doing it, you will not, eventually it will catch up, right? So it's very important to find, and I'm not saying, when I say happiness, I don't mean go out party 24/7, right? The idea of happiness that I'm talking about here is just being able to put yourself in a position where you're enjoying. So don't obsess too much with a specific goal, because a lot of times when you don't hit that goal, you then get disappointed and you're like, oh, I didn't get into this college that I was really hoping to. I think that's great if you get in. It's also great if you don't. Focus on how do you build a career around interest and things that you enjoy. And if you're getting good at people skills, that contributes to it, right? So that's one thought I will say. The second thing I will say is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So while you may want to emulate a certain path, realize that you will, a lot of the, I'll take a personal example. A lot of the, one of my friends, great CEO of a startup, has made hundreds of millions of dollars in value for his shareholders and for himself, did not go to any school that you would have ever heard of, right? The point being that you will have many different ways to be successful in your life. Sometimes you will go up, sometimes you will come down. Even in my own startup, some days, as Shabana was describing, you get a great client and you're super happy. And another day you lose a client and you're not so happy. But the point is you step back and you look, is my trajectory right? Am I still making progress? Can I do things differently the next time around? You learn from your mistakes, your losses, and you move on and consolidate and keep the long-term perspective. I think everyone's journey is different. Focus on finding your strengths, right? So someone's journey might be, I ace all my courses and I get into top schools, and someone else's journey might be different. They might want to go experiment and take a gap year and travel the world and figure out other cultures, and it's fine, right? Figure out what your strengths are and build your career and your progression on that. My last but not the least is real life is more interesting than virtual. So I know we spend so much time even on Zoom calls and other things, but do find the time to go out and relate in the real world. It will help you with your people skills too. So I will just leave this group with these 4 thoughts. By the way, if any of you is interested in entrepreneurship, figuring out how to do startups, you might be thinking, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll post my URL here, and happy to talk about those types of things offline. And that's all I wanted to talk about today.
All right, perfect. So we have a couple questions here for you. So the first question that we're going to be asking is, what piece of advice do you think that you gave is the most significant one, or what do you think is the most applicable one to like the real world?
I think the one thing I will say, start practicing, because no one says this in school, or even our parents don't talk about it, is start practicing how to relate to other people. I think if there's one thing I want you to take away from this conversation is figure out how to put yourself in other people's shoes and relate to them, right? It could be relating to their problem. It could be relating to their objection. It could be relating to what's stressing them out. It could be, if you build that as your foundation in how you relate to other people, and just practice that at home with your little sibling who might be annoying you pretty much 24/7, right? Practice that in every interaction. Just take 2% of that interaction to figure out what the other person's motivations are, where they're coming from, why they're saying what they're saying, you will get better at so many other things. So if there's one advice I will leave you, that would be that.
All right, beautiful. The next question we have is, so relating to your career or to your future, what is one thing you would do right now if you were our age, around, high school age?
It's an excellent question. One thing I will do is I will start experimenting with two things I will do, actually. One, I will start to do more work experiments, right? So initial part of my career, I went down the traditional path of, you go to a good school, you get into good companies. One thing you have early on in your career that you don't have later in your career is you don't have much to lose, right? I mean, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have a car payment yet anyways, right? I think now is a good time to experiment. Maybe not today, your school still might be in high school, but as you get in kind of the early part of your career, try to experiment and do different things, right? So use that time for test and learn. Test your hypothesis on what you're good at, test your hypothesis on what may be an opportunity, and figure that out, because if you do that, no one's going to come back and say, hey, I thought you did these 3 interesting things. All that helps you build up your career. So experiment early in life is what I would say.
All right, great. Next question we have is, so at your company, what's something that you pride yourself upon, like relating to your own self-accomplishment?
Yeah, we've done just a little bit about Resolve, and I don't intend to this be a plug session on Resolve. Is we started the company a few years ago. 2 things that we're really proud of. One, we focused on kind of, we talked about an underserved end of the market. Everyone goes after big companies, large accounts, lots of money. We as a company have built to deliver to the lower end of the market, typically highly underserved. And I'm very happy with the how positive the reception has been from that market as one of the founders. Very happy with that. The other thing I'm really happy is we went and established offices throughout the world. I have employees in not offices, but employees throughout the world. I have somebody who works from Trinidad, somebody who works from Montreal, somebody who works from a remote town in India. We're looking at hiring employees in Indonesia. Point is, I think we adopted this idea that talent does not have a specific place or a specific background they come from. Just be open to people with different backgrounds, people with different geographies, and build upon that. So that's something we've practiced quite diligently. Those are 2 things, what we're doing for our customer, what we're doing with our employees, I'm very happy with, other than the fact that obviously the product works and we're a growing company getting lots of recognition in the market.
For sure. And our final question for the day is, so if you could go back in time and with the knowledge you've gained and the experience you've acquired, what is the first thing that you would do?
Wow, I will start a business earlier in life. I think I worked too long at large corporations. It was not, I think at some point when you're working in a large company, you kind of plateau on remember that slide I was saying, you're always learning, that pace of learning begins to slow. So personally, from a professional perspective, I would do some of what I was doing earlier on in your career. Believe it or not, we had personal example of if I add up all the startups that I did not do, they will probably add up to maybe $100 million, right, or more. We had registered a website called vacationhomes.com a long time ago. This was before Airbnb ever came into picture, and we were going to build a vacation home rental sites because we used to rent vacation homes and it was a painful process. So lots of ideas like that I just was too busy with my work to go out and experiment. So that's what I was saying, experiment early. I would go back and do some of those things early. The only other thing I will say is do things full time. So if you're interested in something, follow, even if you're doing it full time for 3 months, do it. Trying to do too many things 2 hours a week gets you nowhere. You just have a lot of half done things. So if you believe in something, jump in and do it well for a while.